In 1987, Kabul schoolteacher Parwana Ahmadi gathered 42 girls in a hidden cellar and taught them to read, knowing that discovery by Soviet patrols meant imprisonment or worse. A single oil lamp sputtered over stacked textbooks as the girls traced letters in the dust. How did she keep these lessons secret for nearly 2 years? And what fate awaited the girls when the war's tide turned? The Soviet invasion of December 1979 had transformed Kabul into a city of perpetual tension. Armored patrols rolled through the streets at odd hours, and the ubiquitous presence of checkpoints made any gathering of more than 3 people suspect. While the Soviet authorities did not issue an explicit edict forbidding girls from attending school, the social climate had become suffocating. Conservative elements, emboldened by the war, warned families that educated girls would attract unwanted attention from both the occupiers and rival militias. Parwana Ahmadi was born in 1958 to a modest merchant family in the Kart district. She excelled at Kabul University, studying Persian literature and dreaming of becoming a writer. The war stole her younger brother, Ahmad, who vanished after being conscripted into a government militia. His loss left a void that she filled with a fierce determination to protect the minds of the next generation. She believed that literacy was the most subtle yet powerful form of resistance, a way to preserve Afghan identity, history, and hope even when guns rattled outside. In the autumn of 1986, after months of scavenging for supplies, Parwana discovered a forgotten cellar beneath her family's partially collapsed home. The entrance was hidden by a thick rug and a loose floorboard. That, when lifted, revealed a narrow stairway descending into a cool, damp room. The space measured roughly 3 meters by 2 meters, its walls lined with rough stone and its ceiling low enough that one had to duck. Inside lay a cache of water-damaged textbooks rescued from a ruined primary school, a few battered notebooks, and a single brass oil lamp that had once lit her mother's kitchen. Word of the secret lessons spread through the tight-knit network of women who met at the communal well and the bakery. Mothers, desperate to give their daughters a chance at a future, whispered Parwana's name like a prayer. Each girl arrived after dusk, carrying a slate, a piece of charcoal, or a notebook salvaged from her brother's old school bag. They slipped inside one by one, the rug falling back into place with a soft thud that sealed the cellar from the outside world. Lessons began shortly after midnight, when the city's patrols thinned and the distant rumble of tanks faded into a low growl. The girls settled on woven mats, their breath forming tiny clouds in the chilly air. Parwana lit the lamp, its flame casting trembling shadows that danced across the walls. She started with the basics, the shapes of Dari letters, the sounds of Pashto vowels, and simple addition problems that felt like secret codes. As the girls traced characters in the dust, she recited verses from Rumi and lines from the epic Shahnameh, reminding them that their language carried centuries of resilience. The first real test came just 3 weeks into the clandestine classes. A Soviet patrol, attracted by the faint, steady glow of the lamp, halted outside the house. Parwana's heart hammered as she snapped the wick, plunging the cellar into darkness. She ushered the girls behind stacked sacks of rice and flour, then called out in a steady voice that they were merely storing grain for the impending winter. The soldiers, their flashlights sweeping the doorway, saw only the stacked bags and moved on, muttering about the hardships of war. The cellar's secret remained intact, but the close encounter left everyone shaken. Encouraged by the narrow escape, Parwana began to build a quiet support network. The neighborhood baker, Hassan, started leaving warm loaves of naan at the cellar door each night, wrapped in a cloth that also carried a small note about any unusual troop movements. A retired schoolteacher, Madame Layla, who had been forced into early retirement after refusing to teach the Soviet-approved curriculum, began slipping coded messages through a crack in the wall. These notes warned of upcoming patrols, suggested safer routes for the girls to arrive and depart, and occasionally contained short poems that the girls could memorize as morale boosters. As trust grew, the curriculum expanded beyond reading and arithmetic. Parwana introduced lessons on Afghan history, teaching the girls about the dynasties that had shaped their land, the poetry of Kushal Khan Khatak, and the stories of women warriors from the past. She encouraged them to write short letters to relatives living in refugee camps, practicing both composition and the act of keeping familial bonds alive across distance. In a daring twist, some of the older girls began transcribing brief messages for Mujahideen fighters who occasionally passed through the city on their way to the front lines. Information about supply routes, safe houses, and the mood of the civilian populace. About supply routes, safe houses, and the mood of the civilian populace. These exchanges were never recorded on paper. Instead, the girls memorized the content and recited it aloud to the fighters during fleeting encounters, then burned any scraps that might contain evidence. Months turned into seasons, and the cellar became a world unto itself. The girls' confidence blossomed. They started correcting each other's pronunciation, debating the meaning of a verse, and sharing personal stories of loss and hope. Laughter echoed off the stone walls, intermingled with the soft scratch of charcoal on slate. The space, once a symbol of fear, transformed into a sanctuary of learning, a quiet act of defiance that whispered, "We are still here." By early 1989, the underground lessons had endured for nearly 2 years. Parwana felt it was time to acknowledge their progress with a secret graduation ceremony. With the help of a few trusted friends, she cleared debris, hung makeshift banners stitched from old saris, and set up a rough chalkboard salvaged from a destroyed classroom. The 42 girls, dressed in their best attire, some borrowed dresses, some patched trousers, and a few scarves dyed with natural pigments, arrived under the cover of darkness, their hearts pounding with a mixture of pride and apprehension. And a few scarves dyed with natural pigments arrived under the cover of darkness, their hearts pounding with a mixture of pride and apprehension. They took turns reciting poems they had composed during the lessons, solving problems on the chalkboard, and receiving hand-drawn certificates that bore a single flower as a symbol of their quiet triumph. For a brief, glorious moment, the cellar's darkness felt distant, replaced by the pride of achievement. Parents who had managed to slip a peek through a cracked window watched with tears glistening in their eyes, knowing that their daughters had just claimed a piece of the future that the war tried to steal. Then the sound of an engine growled outside. A Soviet truck screeched to a halt, its headlights cutting through the night like a blade. Instinctively, Parwana shoved the girls toward a rear exit, urging them to scatter into the alleys while she stayed behind to burn the lesson plans and notebooks in a metal bucket. Flames licked the papers as the soldiers burst through the door, rifles raised. They found only Parwana, standing amid the ash, her eyes defiant even as they cuffed her and led her away. If her bravery lit a spark in you, hit like, subscribe, and share your own stories of quiet resistance in the comments. Let's keep her lesson alive. The girls fled into the night, some finding refuge with relatives in Pakistan, others slipping back into the city to continue teaching in hidden rooms and basements. Parwana endured a year of interrogation and hard labor in a Soviet prison camp before being released in a prisoner exchange deal. Though she never returned to formal teaching, her former students carried her legacy forward. Many became teachers, doctors, and activists who refused to let education be silenced again. Her whispered lessons may have been erased from official histories, but they live on in every Afghan girl who dares to open a book.